Well, welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming. You've made it to the Aquarian series here at the United Lodge of Theosophists here in San Diego. And what we're doing is we are taking up the themes in the Aquarian Almanac. And there's 52 themes every year, just like there are 52 weeks. And this week we are taking up the theme in honor of Buddha Purnima, which is actually coming up on Thursday. And the theme is the Great Renunciation. And that will be given to us by Monica Page. Monica has asked me to read a reading from the Jewel in the Lotus. Appropriately, it's a Buddhist document called the Gandhavyuha Sutra. It's called the Vajra of Wisdom. And as we know, the Vajra is connected with the idea of the diamond. And it's reading number 506, in case anybody has a copy of the Jewel in the Lotus. The Bodhisattva Maitreya taught Sudana. Vajra does not come from any mine other than that in which crystalline gold is found. Similarly, the Vajra-like bodhicitta does not come from any mine of merit other than the Vajra mine of great compassion, where the Bodhisattva labors to save the world. The gold mine of transcendental wisdom, which is the activity of Buddhahood. There is a tree called rootless. Its roots can never be seen, yet its branches, leaves, flowers, and fruit are seen growing luxuriantly. Similarly, the roots of the bodhicitta tree are never seen, yet the flowers of noble deeds, wisdom, and supernormal power are in full bloom, and the bodhisattva's great compassionate heart is seen covering the whole world like a gossamer net. Vajra should not be kept in a broken vessel, but in a perfect, bright chalice. Similarly, the bodhicitta Vajra cannot be kept in the vessel of beings of little faith and weak morality, scared, passive, obscured, trampled down. It cannot be kept in the ruined vessel of a mind agitated by lack of discrimination. It is to be kept only in a vessel that is a suitable abode for the bodhisattva mind. As Vajra penetrates every precious gem, so bodhicitta penetrates the treasure of the Dharma. As Vajra crushes every granite mountain, so bodhicitta Vajra destroys the granitic heap of false views. Even when fragmented, Vajra excels all precious gems and is superior to ornaments of gold. Similarly, however imperfect and undeveloped in spirit, bodhicitta Vajra is superior to the golden ornaments of merit possessed by Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. Though broken, Vajra removes poverty. Similarly, bodhicitta Vajra removes the poverty which results from the cycle of rebirth. The smallest piece of Vajra is marked by the power of shattering every base and precious stone. Similarly, however humble its undertaking, the bodhicitta piece of Vajra has the power to destroy ignorance. Vajra is not found in the hand of an ordinary person, nor is bodhicitta Vajra found in the possession of the gods and men whose merit is inferior and whose inner mind is ordinary. One unacquainted with the value of jewelry fails to recognize the virtue of the Vajra gem and does not know how to use its unsurpassed power. Similarly, one who is weak-minded does not recognize the value of bodhicitta Vajra and of prajna paramita Vajra and does not appreciate its unsurpassed power. Vajra cannot be exhausted, nor can bodhicitta Vajra, which is the cause and reality of all knowledge. The Vajra hammer cannot be carried even by the most powerful human being, save through the supernormal strength of Narayana. Similarly, the great Vajra scepter of bodhicitta cannot be borne by Shravakas and Vajeka Buddhas, however strong, save through the Narayana strength of the great bodhisattvas, who are supported by the cause and power of transcendental wisdom, and who have consecrated their merit to that wisdom, and who have attained the power of the great manifestation. I'll give you Monica Page.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Grateful to be with us, everybody, here in the Sangam. A statement from the Isopanishad says, renounce and enjoy this world. And that sounds like a bit of a conflict of interest, but not so. From Madame Blavatsky, Secret Doctrine, Book 1, page 268, she says, starting on the long journey immaculate, descending more and more into sinful matter, having connected himself with every atom in manifested space, the pilgrim, having struggled through and suffered in every form of life and being, is only at the bottom of the valley of matter and half through this cycle when he has identified himself with collective humanity. This he has made in his own image. In order to progress upwards and homewards, the God has now to ascend the weary uphill path of the Golgotha of life. It is the martyrdom of self-conscious existence. Like Vishvakarman, he has to sacrifice himself to himself in order to redeem all creatures, to resurrect from the many into the one life. Then he ascends into heaven indeed. We're plunged into the incomprehensible absolute being and bliss of paranirvana. He reigns unconditionally, and whence he will redescend again. The Great Renunciation. For the entire cycle of a Manvantara, the period of manifestation and activity, the immortal aspect of our being, the monad, has embarked on the long and weary pilgrimage, and in this regard, at least, the action of our lessons, the action of and our lessons about renunciation have already begun. As we, through the power of evolution, increasingly make our way toward collectively becoming universal in our consciousness. Gratefully, by way of the mercy of law, of cycles, of evolution, the great development of universal compassion, the law of laws, there are those remarkable beings, the Tathagatas, a term that translates as one who has thus gone, who have indeed gone far beyond the wheel of woe, and with enormous power, wisdom, love, and compassion for mankind, and all the kingdoms of nature as well, willingly sacrifice and share the light of their attainment, so that on this journey back to the all in all, we may not lose our way. Having accomplished the state of self-consciousness awareness, we are at some point given the opportunity to consciously choose the path of giving up the self for the sake of the self, the all in all. And it's very much like that question and answer that used to be so popular. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. We're given the opportunity through spiritual practice, whether scriptural study of the teachings, meditation, japa, selfless actions in the world, to time and time again increase our ability to be of help and to engage for the sake of all from the inside out without self-concern. Raghavan Iyer's article, Renunciation and Responsibility, he talks about our path upward, saying that the immortal aspect of every human being is overbrooded by a luminous dhyani. And this is so for the monad's entire pilgrimage in a manvantara, with every incarnation. He says that this immortal part of our being is both the noumenal cause and also the silent watcher over the successive projections into this phenomenal world. And that the partial incarnation of the immortal monad in the personality of man is in actuality a sacrificial participation in the phenomenal shadowy regions of existence, that a spark of the light of compassionate awareness, thus endowing reflective consciousness, choice, discernment, moral consciousness, and also responsibility. He tells us that although this is true, the moral purposes of the monad's pilgrimage cannot be served well due to the manic aspect constantly bombarding by the sway of an unregulated comic principle and a chaotic astral plane of cravings and fears and what he terms foolish imaginings. They form a cloud that obscures the Atma-Buddhic aspect of our nature, and they block the noetic aspect of us, which can be a consciousness of alertness, awareness, deliberation, calmness, creativity, and direct perception. So, this embodied life on the wheel of rebirth with its obscurations and veils, illusions, delusions, are what we as students are up against. In Raghavan Iyer's article, Buddha and the Path to Enlightenment, Part 1, he speaks to us of the 10 chief fetters, these strongholds that keep man bound to the wheel of rebirth, referring to it as the spell of samsara, that we must become free of. He talks about the incredible value of the Dhammapada, the Buddha's message to all of humanity, saying that the Dhammapada is a catalyst for self-transformation, that it is rooted in realization of the fundamental unity of life, giving meaning to events and relations in an ever-changing cosmos. That the Dhammapada is a preamble, he says, to the thousands of treatises from Pali, Tibetan Buddhist, Chinese, that it is, in fact, a direct mode of transmission, and it has cleansing and restorative power, a hidden alchemy. I want to stop and read here from the Dhammapada. This one is entitled Mind. Just as an arrowsmith shapes an arrow to perfection with fire, so does the wise man shape his mind, which is fickle, unsteady, vulnerable, and erratic. Like a fish taken from the safety of its water home and cast upon the dry land, so does this mind flutter due to the lure of the tempter. Therefore, one should leave the dominion of Mara. How good it is to rein the mind, which is unruly, capricious, rushing wherever it pleases. The mind so harassed will bring one happiness. Harnessed, not harassed. A wise man should pay attention to his mind, which is very difficult to perceive. It is extremely subtle and it wanders wherever it pleases. The mind, well guarded and controlled, will bring him happiness. The heart of a fully conscious man is fearless. He has freed his mind of lust and anger. He has transcended both good and evil. Observe the body as fragile, an earthen vase. Build a mind as solid as a fortified city. Then confront Mara with the weapon of insight, and proceeding without attachment, guard what you have already conquered. A mind out of control will do more harm than two angry men engaged in combat. A well-directed mind creates more well-being than the wholesome actions of parents toward their children. A huge part of Lord Gautama Buddha's mission is to set us free of externals. We know well enough the secular world is pretty much locked down with externals. But here Gautama Buddha is not only referring to that in terms of getting free of externals, but he's speaking specifically here about getting free of the external props that may be part of an attempt at a spiritual life, but in fact really keep us on the wheel. To have us embrace the deity within us with great understanding, to live from the inside out instead of the other way around, all while having not the slightest resentment toward the external world. In fact, having love and compassion for it. It says that the Dhammapada teaches those who are receptive to free themselves, that it is a purification that eludes behavioral psychology and salvationist theology. It tells us the Dhammapada can be a program of progressive self-initiation, a high accountability, that of becoming more than human, yet in harmony with all of humanity, immersed in the basic activities of life, and that the Dhammapada, he says, stands in relation to Gautama Buddha as the Gospels of John and Thomas stand in relation to Jesus Christ. So here we are with the 10 fetters. Now, one important issue regarding these fetters is that they indicate how they can engage in stealth to a seeker, meaning one can have some measure of a sense of solidity on the path, having moved along with every good intention intact, made progress, and then an issue comes up and shows us that we haven't really eradicated whatever block to the path may be. And it just shows up again under whatever circumstance appropriate for its return. These, from this student's view, are unusual and distinct points made here, and they all seem to point to eradicating delusion in some way or another. Just perhaps when one thinks they've made big progress, it shows up in another way. So first, Atavada. I think we're all relatively familiar with that as Americans. The heresy of separateness, egocentricity. Number two, Vichikicha, chronic doubt, embedded in the mind, even to the point of mockery of the mere possibility of enlightenment, so strong that it creates a veil of delusion that conceals the fact that ignorance and knowledge are really relative terms. And in this way, it becomes a hindrance. Let me hold on for this one. Sila bata params asa. I'm sorry. I got to take another shot at that. Sila bata paramasa. The veil that is created by faith in dogmatic religion that confines one to specific rituals and beliefs. In this way, even the loftiest conceptions can be a hindrance to spiritual growth by the exclusion of independent self-progression. 4, kamaraga, sensory attraction, the stirring up former fears and longings and cravings that one mistakenly thought they'd overcome, ruthless and amoral behavior. Patiga, the fetter of hostility and hate. This one could be even harder to remove than the previous one. A person may think that they have become anchored in that state beyond the pairs of opposites, only to find it activated again, perhaps through a sense of disgust at the plight and the depravity of others. Finding that the opposition to the cruelty and deprivation that others are plagued with activates the polarity all over again. Attraction and repulsion renews itself that one thought they had transcended. Number 6, Ruparaga, the craving and the longing for embodied life. Even engaging in the unrealizable wish for physical immortality and giving focus to an investment in an imaginary paradise of endless enjoyment. Aparuga, this is the more subtle desire for formless goods, that of fame and glory, or some idea that one would want others to hold about them, about us. Mana, conceit. Once the aspirant has freed himself from all these previous fetters, then the added fetter of, then the added fetters of mana, conceit, and udachacha, restlessness, both rear their ugly heads in a most insidious way. The fetter of mana, conceit, turns inward to flatter itself with secondary accomplishments that hinder enlightenment. And the fetter of udacha, restlessness, turns outward, engaging in a shallow judgmentalism towards other seekers. So these 10 fetters create a strong chain that reinforces and binds the root of them all, which is avidya, ignorance, root ignorance. And Raghavan Iyer tells us that only when each aspect of this mighty chain is dislodged, dispelled, ignorance is then truly confronted as the naked hollowness that it is. He uses the quote, the voidness of the seeming full, from the voice of the silence. He tells us that only when this chain is calmly and properly analyzed, stripped of its deceptive magnetism, it utterly collapses and only pure awareness is what remains. Buddha made it clear that he did not want his disciples to blindly follow him or make the assumption that they understood him. But it is said that he made his life a living proof of the path to enlightenment. And in this way, his life and what he taught served as the perfect expression of Dharma, the noble way of the Tathagatas who had gone before him. The story of Gautama Buddha has been seen through more than a few different lenses. And in that, it's said that some have preferred a linear version of his story with accurate accounts and chronology of events. But traditionally, some have used, or rather fused, facts with myth. And as we know well, that myth can serve as a way of symbolizing great spiritual truths. The article points out that the traditional accounts of Buddha's life don't reduce fidelity to truth to, quote, emasculated literalism. We know that Siddhartha Gautama, born 6th century BC, the son of the great king Shuddhodana, ruler of Kapilavastu, his father planned for him the highest of systematic study and training of the royal kind that gave him everything he needed to become a Kshatriya ruler, while shielding him from tragedy and misery. The prince grew up in an exceedingly blessed atmosphere. He mastered arts, letters, intellectual discipline, astronomy, mathematics, the kingly arts of diplomacy, warfare, gaining strength and courage, the kind that excels in statecraft. He also learned the etiquette of a man of great authority, able to treat all with courtesy and grace. It's said that the allegorical stories about the Buddha seek to show that he did not attain his remarkable insight in one single lifetime, but that he spent many lifetimes learning, applying the highest wisdom in compassionate actions, helping others without violating the balance of karma, law at all times, in all places at work. It's said that Gautama Buddha took on incarnate existence at a specific time and for a specific purpose. He wanted to see the harsh realities of life at some point, what sickness, death, and troubles people were afflicted with, and he was unprepared for what he witnessed. Iyer tells us that when the Buddha saw society in this unvarnished way, with all its illnesses and troubles, it activated in him enormous insight and compassion, prajna and karuna, which brings up and intensifies more concern and more care for others than for oneself. In this way, he came to the realization of the truth of cyclic existence, dukkha, as suffering, pain, and dissatisfaction because of ceaseless change and chaos and inevitable decay and death. He came to the realization that the only solution could be found in the realms far beyond the plane of the senses, where there is no you, no I, no mine, thine, but the transcendent all. So the prolonged, oh, I should move that. That's just dreadful. The prolonged vigil of Gautama Buddha. This is about the night-long vigil and deep meditations that bore powerful fruit for Gautama Buddha in his inward search for truth and remedy for the plight of man. It's said that the long vigil, often portrayed as the progressive rise to various states of consciousness attained by Gautama Buddha, are usually given to us as a progressive ascent to these different states of consciousness, a gradual lifting of veils of darkness. His first watch of the night He witnessed all his former incarnations, comprehended the pilgrimage of humanity and the strenuous path of full emancipation. Imagine the strength required to withstand seeing not some, all your incarnations. Remarkable. On his second watch, his spiritual insight expanded, opening his divine eye, Diva Chakshu, that sees the inevitable dissolution of form and rebirth of beings, apprehending the great law of karma. On his third watch of the night, Buddha directed his attention to both the visible and invisible worlds. He understood the immense implications of the Four Noble Truths, in Pali, Chattari Arya Sakani, in Sanskrit, Chatvari Arya Satyani. This being the central core of his teaching, part of the fundamental doctrines of Buddhism. A quote from Raghavan Iyer. As Buddha himself taught, the battle for enlightenment cannot be won in cloistered academies or congregational assemblies. It must be bought by each one in the form of his individual conscience and in the sanctuary of his inmost struggles and deepest meditations. Truly, it is a powerful grace. We must certainly be clear and know that Buddha, having accomplished from the depths of his being the realization of the Four Noble Truths with a deep reverence and compassion for man, and understanding man's condition of suffering, that this would move him to make moral power and ethics the center of his teaching. They not only take command of one's behavior and conditions, morality and ethics go far beyond the niceties of life. They are incredible purifiers, and purification is a powerful force that drives the ascent upward on the path, leaving no room for the energies and concerns that would render us bound to the lower aspect of life. And one can only go so far on this upward path into higher realms with concerns that keep us bound. Lord Gautama Buddha, by example and instruction, has increased our chances of victory on this upward way. A little story from Buddha. He asked, "What do you think, bhikkhus? Which are more, these few Simsapa leaves in my hand, or the other leaves in yonder Simsapa grove? These leaves which the exalted one holds in his hand are not many. I and many more are those in the Simsapa grove. So also, bhikkhus, is that much more which I have learned and have not told you than that which I have told you. And why have I not told you? Because, bhikkhus, it would bring you no benefit. It does not conduct to progress in holiness. It does not lead to turning away from the earthly to the conquest of desire, to cessation of the transitory, to peace, to knowledge, to illumination, to nirvana. Therefore, I have not declared it unto you." A remarkable silence. After Gautama Buddha's death, in the effort to remain true to the Dharma, to Buddha's teachings, an incredible range of views and schools of thought flourished. In spite of all the various viewpoints of each of the schools, they had a common foundation, and this was the Four Noble Truths and the exalted life of Gautama Buddha as an example. And because of this, they were able to engage in various ideas and debates over doctrine with tolerance and with goodwill. And because of this, the various schools, Mahayana, Theravada, Vajrayana, all flourished side by side. Tripitaka, three main categories of scripture: Sutra Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka, Abhidhamma Pitaka. Sutra focuses on the teachings by the Buddha. Vinaya, rules and precepts for monks and nuns. And Abhidhamma, a collection of highly abstract scholastic texts containing Buddhist scriptures and commentaries, simultaneously philosophical, psychology, and ethics. A very wide range of scriptures, and though indisputable antiquity, no greater claim to being the exact words uttered by Buddha than other sacred texts, including Mahayana Sutras. Importantly, they all had the common touchstone and the central idea of the Four Noble Truths and the life of Buddha. And this alone generated tolerance and goodwill between those various systems. It is for this reason, the foundation of the Four Noble Truths, that all the schools, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, flourished side by side in India. Some quotes from Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. If anything is worth doing, do it with all your heart. Even death is not to be feared by one who has lived wisely. It's a man's own mind, not his enemy or foe, that lures him to evil ways. Three things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Out of the Mahayana tradition, many different schools and traditions flourished, each of them developing in their own distinct way in Tibet. China, Korea, Japan were influenced by the Stavira philosophy in the Theravadan teachings. There were some schools that incorporated ideas from Taoist tradition and focused on eliminating doubt through the deepening of faith, which gave to Sukhavati school. Still others focused on meditation, which became Zen in Japan. All these various paths taken had as their foundation the paramitas: morality, thought, speech, action, the way to any real progress on this path of enlightenment. It is said that Ananda, the good being disciple of Gautama Buddha, having remembered all that the Buddha had said, always uttered these words before repeating in the Sangam the words Gautama Buddha had spoken. It also served as the benediction before beginning the long discourses that would take place. And also because they are considered to be the actual words of the Buddha, often repeated before a reading from the Dhammapada. Although considered to be the words of Gautama Buddha, no one knows who first compiled any particular version of the Dhammapada. The Tibetan Udana Varga, approximately 375 verses from Dhammapada, and also a portion of Udana, is credited to Dharmatra, a general title that is given to teachers, authors, which means Dharma savior or Dharma rescuer. Unlike the sutras, which are an extended focus on a particular topic or question, all of which begin with the words of respect. Thus have I heard, eva maya shrutam. Dhammapada points to the direct speech of the Buddha. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is the triple gem, the triune force that removes the false spell of conditioned existence, inducing deeper insight into unconditioned reality. These three coming together is an act of oneness and devotion, and its intent to release one from bondage of the world with all its trappings is echoed in all other true traditions, and surely is meant to retrieve the soul from the snares of the reality of manifested world. As did Jesus Christ, the Savior did, he spoke the words in an effort to bring together a sangam with a single focus. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the great commandment. And the second is likened to it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And so in gathering, we gratefully say, thus I have heard. Do not follow low practices. Do not live carelessly. Do not hold wrong views. Do not prolong the suffering of the world. Lift yourself up. Be attentive. Act virtuously. Refuse to do otherwise. One who follows this path lives happily, both in this life and in the life to come. Perceive the world as a bubble. Perceive the world as a mirage. If you see the world in this way, you render the Lord of death powerless. Look at the body as a royal chariot to which the ignorant cling while the wise let go. Whoever moves from carelessness to vigilance lights up the world like the moon that emerges from a cloud. Whoever overcomes his unwholesome deeds with wholesome actions illuminates the world like the moon emerging from a cloud. There is blindness all around. Only very few can see. Many are like birds trapped in a net. Only few escape and achieve liberation. A man who violates even one spiritual law, who is dishonest and telling lies, unconcerned with the life hereafter, there is no evil which a one dares not to do. Those closed off from generosity do not enter the realm of gods. Fools do not praise generosity. The wise rejoice in generosity, and by that will be happy after death. Better the sole rulership over the world, better than going to heaven, better than lordship over all the worlds, is the fruition of the stream winner's path. Thank you for this opportunity to learn about this massively great, good being, Gautama Buddha. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. That was just brilliant.
Thank you.
You've got, I think you can handle your own hand. You can see who's got their hands up.
Yes, there's Judy.
Hello,
Hi, Judy.
Monica. Hi, really profound and special presentation. I have just written an essay on Rakamim and Karuna, a comparison of compassion in the Buddhist and Judaic tradition. And your quotation of love your neighbor as yourself, which is Leviticus 19:18, does remind me very much of the Buddhist teaching. But the dialogue I recently had with a rabbi is that doesn't mean that your neighbor is yourself. It's you love your neighbor as if he were yourself, and that you love all beings. So I think one of the differences in these two traditions is that the Jewish tradition retains the separateness of the ego. We're recognizing the separateness of the other is important. It seems that what Buddhism wants to do is to fly beyond all separateness and enter into the realm of the eternal or the higher self. And I wonder if you could speak to this more, because it seems the ultimate renunciation is the renunciation of the personal ego, the idea that I am a permanent being
Yes.
as name and form. And this is what Buddhism, I think, wants to teach more than anything.
I absolutely have some agreement with you in this regard, Judy. It is very clear that there's a step that Buddhism and even Theosophy, of course, takes that the organized religions don't. It's as if they're trying to hold on to, everybody's got, there are probably various reasons for this. Some of it is a control over people, to help to get them habituated in looking from the inside out. Some of it is fear. Some of it is protection, So we've got, there's work to be done, but what an amazing thing. I'm embarrassed to say, known that much about Gautama Buddha. So I'm really grateful for getting to do this, because his absolute will to see to it that we go beyond this was very evident to me in reading and studying about him. So anyway, I think that you have a very strong point.
Yes, thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Another question from the hall.
Jonathan.
Well, I see Miluka.
Oh, Miluka's hand is up.
Yeah.
Unmute, Miluka. Can I unmute? I can't unmute.
Yes, unmute yourself.
Hello, good
There you go. Hello.
Monica, as always, you have such an eloquence and your projection and the way the words come from your heart and really this is very inspiring, I think, for all of us. And we're all learning. So thank you. Very lovely. I have a question.
Thank you.
There,
Yes.
Buddha, because you were talking about, renunciation and saving and all that. Buddha, one of the quotes was, "No one save us but ourselves."
That's it.
Yeah.
I would say that there are definitely some understandings where that idea is concerned, but theosophy is a rare form of adulthood, I guess you could say. But a part of that that idea that's put into people about being saved has to do with the conscious alignment with higher forces, that they're not impersonal enough to maybe to do it in any other way, which is why these beings come. But there's definitely an effort to see a person operate and function in a higher frequency, which also has a measure of safety to it as well. But it just takes it all out of that connotation probably far too often.
Question.
Yes, Jonathan, I'm sorry.
This question might have to do with those 10 impediments.
Oh, yeah.
But there was one point, you were toward the end of your presentation, you were talking about the kind of the potency of silence, especially in reference to certain contexts. He would not want to say too much to certain people.
Oh,
or
yes.
whatever.
Yes.
It seems like there's a tendency, at least I find it on my part, I'm guilty, of maybe being attached. It seems like it takes a certain renunciation to not be attached to saying too much. What do you think about that?
I think I think you're nailing it. I think that he was demonstrating his wisdom, and he was laying it out for them that not everything can be shared with you, and don't make the mistake of thinking, not, in an angry manner, but don't think this is all there is, and I think also that his choice to do that, and let me say, I didn't put it in the presentation, but there was a paragraph after that that contradicted that experience that he gave the bhikkhus. But I say that to say I believe that he did this out of a keen consciousness of these other people were on their journey, what they could handle, what they could not handle, what they were ready for and not ready for, and also to give them the idea that not everything that you hear is the end all be all of it. So it's like those two things.
Together.
Yeah, but an amazing wisdom to be able to discern, because that's what it is, discerning, I would think, what a person has that you could say, what could you say to them, given that you understand their consciousness?
I think that's another thing in Buddhism, is it not? That the Buddha isn't coming in, parachuting in from another planet or whatever. He went through all these lifetimes.
Yes.
As you pointed out. And so he had to earn all this wisdom.
Yes.
So don't you think that that has something to do with how he was able to kind of assess where people are? Because he had been there.
Oh, wow. That is so good. Absolutely. I mean, it kind of boggles the mind when we have to remember that a real, authentic hero earned it, climbed his way up the scale of the ladder in a way that makes him. I'm trying to remember that there is a no turning back point of some kind with masters and initiates where they have just ended the argument of the lower and higher, and it's gone and there's nothing left. And so they're able to function from a completely different place. Of course, I don't know what place that is, but you know what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. Des.
Monica. Hi.
How were you?
Great. Oh my goodness. I'm still marinating. Thank you so much. That was so beautifully presented. Oh, I mostly just wanted to tell you that. I loved it. And I'm gonna be thinking about it for a while after we end this presentation. But I was curious about mana. And actually all 10 of the fetters, and including this concept of udhacha. I'm not even saying it right. Help me out here.
Udacha.
It follows conceit, right?
I believe so.
Follows mana.
Mana, and then
I think it does.
okay.
But let me find. Give me a second to find where that was.
I was wondering about conceit, and is this like, I was wondering if they're in kind of an order of like conceit would be the hardest to overcome. or if it's just all inclusive and it just happens to express itself last. I don't know, but it seems interesting that restlessness is somehow seems to be paired up with that.
Well, the thing, when I read that there is Raghavan Iyer was saying that each of component of this chain must be stripped and seen for what it is. And that made me think that there is an order in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's not, but that was kind of the feeling that I was getting.
Well, I remember it being told to me, not just by familial sources, but also others, that the pride is the hardest to overcome. And it made me think of that when I saw conceit as one of the later, or mana as one of the later betters. But I was also curious about restlessness, and I was wondering, how did you think about that concept in this order?
Well, what is the one you said before? Restlessness or the conceit? Yeah. Well, I think in probably a lot of metaphysical, spiritual environments, you're told that of all the vanities, spiritual pride is the worst and the hardest to overcome. You know, the moment you do a number on yourself and say, "Oh, look what I've attained,"
look back on yourself.
You've lost it. And so I think that was a part of it. But the way, I don't know, I think overall, there is a sense of order that we're not necessarily told about. And it makes me think that each of these fetters have a specific place and connection to one another. And that's why we're told that each one has to be stripped and seen for what it is. And that's the way that we overcome it. I can't believe how difficult that sounds to this person's mind.
Yeah. I think on the connection between the two.
Okay.
Possible connection between conceit and restlessness might be.
Could he get closer to the mic? I can barely hear him.
Yeah, come.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better. Thanks.
Okay, a possible connection between conceit and restlessness might be, I'm thinking restlessness, I'm not sure what that means, but it could be spiritual dilettante. Let's try this, let's try that. And then guru hopping, and then which is different than open-mindedness, one would think, because if one is triggered by something that somebody else says, then that's not open-mindedness. But on the other hand, superficial horizontal skating, from one of the skimming stones, that's not really going, it's not giving your system, to whatever system you're in, a fair chance. It seems like you want to go deep. And the conceit thing might be, check me out, I know all these things.
Yes.
Even if it's just saying it to himself.
Yeah.
Quietly, and that's
just a thought. So
yeah, great. Well, it was wonderful.
Thank you so much, Des. Jeffrey Clark.
Yeah, hi, Monica Page.
How are you?
Yeah, thanks. It was great. And I was also really interested in the 10 fetters. Just to touch on, I'm not sure if they have to be in that order. I think there's different orders probably in different scriptures, actually. But one thing is that the first three are always in that order. So Attavada, which is that idea of,
Egos.
I am a self.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a self, or I have a self, or I don't have a self is also part of that. That's also a delusion.
Okay.
So to cut through that whole preoccupation with self and investment in that. And then Vicikiccha, like you said, is doubt. And then I think number 3 is really also interesting. So these first 3, if you can get rid of those first 3 fetters, then you're a stream enterer. You're on the first you got the first fruit on the way to arhatship. But yeah, and Silibata Paramasa is this idea that you can perform some kind of ritual.
Mhm.
And that would, liberate you on an ethical or psychological level. It's sort of like checking the box, like, like a lot of religions have, I mean, even Theosophy, I think you could find it like, I read these books or something. I
Right.
mean, and so, and it just is sort of a testament, like those 3 are the threshold in entering the path, on a really sustained level, like entering the stream
Wow.
that leads yeah. And but I think what was said about Udacha, about the restlessness, was right. It's often associated with meditative states.
Oh, okay.
And I guess maybe this is just a speculation on my part, but mana is sort of like, well, I've attained. It could be look at me or wow, I'm something.
Yeah.
And
That's what I
and
thought.
there's a sort of inertia there. And Udacha could be like the other side of that coin, is getting very excited, getting wow, next, or something. It's
Sure.
so I could see that those 2 would be maybe the swings of an unstable pendulum. That's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm listening to you say that the first 3 are usually, seen as a unit to some degree. That number is throughout everything in terms of building, isn't it? And so it would seem that if you can get a grip on those 3, then you have that much better of a chance at handling the others. But like I said, the mana, I appreciate what you said about that. That's all of these things that these fetters, which really I found myself interested because there is a spiritual application which makes all of it worse, and there could be a tendency to think that, oh, I'm spiritual, so I don't have these problems anymore. But they show up. So, but thanks, Jeff.
Question after.
Okay, I think it's Jitendra.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. The time is 2:37 in Zambia, Africa. Early morning. Been awake since midnight to join you.
Thank you for being with us.
I've got 10 fetters, which I wrote them about 45 years ago in my one book, small book, At the Feet of the Master. The 10 in English is, the first one is the illusion of personality. Second one is doubt. Third is superstition. Fourth is desire. Fifth is repulsion. Sixth, wish for form life. 7, wish for formless life. 8 is the pride. 9th is wavering, and 10th is ignorance.
Yes, you're what I'm hearing is a pretty strong alignment with what I saw as the explanation of these 10. So
yes, yeah. Those are in the Pali language. The 10 are in the Pali language. What I mentioned, 10 are in the English language. What I also was, your presentation was very, very good. And I was still expecting the 8 noble paths.
Oh, will you
Uh,
forgive me? They're here another time.
yes, another time. I
Yeah.
know it takes a long time.
All right. Well, thank you very
Okay.
much for your
Thank you.
input.
Very, very good presentation. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Jeffrey, your hand is still up. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I do. At the beginning, John, you had Jonathan read that beautiful long quote. So could you talk a little bit more about Vajra and bodhicitta? Maybe you could explain for us what
I don't
is that sort of too big of a
I don't know if I don't know if I understand it well enough to jump in the water.
I could.
Does that make sense? But Jonathan certainly can.
I don't have enough sense. I don't have enough sense to not jump in. I'll be your huckleberry. Okay. Well, just when I was reading it, not certainly, for sure, not, having done deep thought on this, but it just occurred to me just while reading it was that there's this making this connection about the Vajra, and the Vajra, it figures quite a bit in the voice of the silence, doesn't it? Especially in the second fragment. And it's, I think in modern times, we would say it's like cut through, where you're going straight to something. And it's the hardest gem. And you put a diamond blade on certain saws that you want to cut something really for sure. And it's found deep within the earth, and it's made from compression, and it's a rare jewel, and not everybody knows even what it is.
Mhm.
That was kind of in that reading. And then this connection with bodhicitta. I wouldn't be able to say a whole lot on that, but just this idea that bodhicitta is something very rare and something very unusual, the seed of enlightenment. And it's something that, even though it's rare, it's absolutely precious. And that if one can nurture the seed of enlightenment in oneself, because everybody has some kind of a seed of enlightenment, if one can recognize it, so much of this is about, the language of recognition. But if one can recognize that which is precious in another human being or in oneself, and this idea of the bodhicitta, that it's the seed of Buddhahood, and it's so remarkable that we all have the seed of Buddhahood, and it's the seed of renunciation. So these are some preliminary thoughts. Maybe others have other thoughts.
Meluka has her hand up.
Yeah, regarding bodhicitta, you could go on the Pema Chodron on YouTube or
yes.
website, because she's the one that have promoted this. She's a Buddhist nun, and she was the founder of this first monastery of nuns in the United States. And there's some breathing exercise that you use for it, but at the same time, she say when we work on ourselves, try to work on the rigid part of ourselves, soften our heart. If you want to change the world, we have to start from within, and we have to have a compassionate and kind heart. And it's just about the soft spot that we have within, and have the courage to be kind of that responsibility, to enjoy true practice of peace.
Beautiful, beautiful, Meluka. Thank you.
Welcome.
Joe Miller, did you have?
Yeah, I have a different question.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hi, Monica.
Hi there, Joe.
I was thinking, the topic is the Great Renunciation. I was wondering about small renunciations. I was wondering about small, concrete renunciations. How do we recognize what we should renounce, and how do we have the right attitude towards it so that we don't fall into the martyr complex?
Oh, wow. That is kind of not small. But I think that in general, people who have a tendency to be loving and giving and unselfish um, uh, are run into potential problems because they don't know, they may not know much about the doctrine of impersonality and the value that that has. That maybe one could be even more effective if they weren't necessarily, emotionally or psychologically involved in the help that they do. And then there's the other idea that some kind of help you can't be distant. You have to be front and center. You have to feel the emotion that at least to some degree, that the other person is feeling. I would think that therapists have to do a diligence in self-care so that they don't take on, you know, the 5, 6 patients, auras of the patients that they saw that day, particularly with the mind. So all of it has its arena of care that has to be taken. But one nice thing that people can do or we can do is to help people be aware of their own sense of giving. That's inspiring to people. They may not even realize they're doing it. But to give it some sort of understanding and maybe even a formal shaping or construction of some kind, this takes people on a flight to feel that you have the ability to give to others. But then there's, the person who, we know about the woman who, won't eat dinner because it's either her kid or herself. So somebody has to give up something, and she knows good and well it's going to be her. So there's a whole lot of different ways to customize. I can't believe I'm saying that word. That's just awful. But there are a lot of ways in every walk, in every instance where a person can be helpful, but knowing that you can help and keeping your ego concerns out of the equation. That strength, I believe that strengthens people. It increases their will, and it's very easy in the time that we're in to take a cowardly route because nobody wants to get in the mire. But there's a way to do it. Make any sense at all?
That's very helpful. And you said you started to say something about those who don't know about the doctrine of impersonality. And I wonder what you could say about how does impersonality fit into some of what you just talked about? Like I suppose I can understand like a therapist learning to keep a kind of distance, emotional distance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very interesting to think about that as renunciation. But any thought you might have?
Well, there is the football coach for the high school who sees a young kid and knows perfectly well that kid is handling something awful at home. And he wants to reach out and give him a little bit more energy and focus to try and help him lift himself to a better state of mind about himself so that he could, whatever, go to college, whatever it would be. But then he has to figure out how he does this so that he doesn't impose on law. And I'm thinking of Gautama Buddha engaging in certain things and being very mindful that the law is always at work. And so you don't want to overstep the boundary. But if you don't know what the boundary is, it's a safe bet that some little small amount of impersonality and dispassion to have an overview of what somebody is going through can be helpful to them. And then the next time you find yourself in that situation, or it appeals to you as some kind of work, you've gathered to yourself a better understanding about ways to be helpful, because it's not going to be helpful for you to go down with the kid. So everybody has to be lifted up and be strong. And so how do we do that? And sometimes your heart just has to be involved, plain and simple. And then you get something from that, you know. I hope that helps. Diane Martin, hello.
Hi there. I really admire the Tibetan people, and I read that they were a very spiritual people. Maybe it's their altitude; they're very high up there.
Mm.
But they have this concept. I don't know what you think of it, but I think it's on a par with the Kuan Yin pledge. It's that
Wow.
I can't think of the word right now. It's I know you other people know what I'm talking.
Tonglen.
Yeah, Tonglen, that's exactly it, right. I'm 90 years old. I forget everything all the time. Tonglen is the practice that someone else will learn. This must take lifetimes to learn how to do. The pain of another, just because they are all hard. And it's because they don't want them to, deal with their own karma. It's that they can't stand it. They can't stand that another person's in so much pain that they want to take it away from them, and they'll take it on as a gesture of generosity. What do you think of the concept?
I think that is remarkable, but I also think that a person, what a great people. I mean, what a great people. But I also get the feeling that someone who's able to do that so easily, this is not the first rodeo of doing that. This is not their first time having that measure of compassion where they could give so easily. There's a lot to be afraid of, But,
I imagine lifetimes to learn that.
Yes.
Technique,
Such a great people, the Tibetan people.
Ken? Yes.
Yes.
Monica, earlier on, you had a slide about the Raghavan Iyer article, Buddha and the Path to Enlightenment, and the Dhammapada. You made a comment that it has a special power to help self-initiation. And that there's like a direct transmission, so like touching the hem of Jesus's robe or something like that.
Yes.
So, like, do people use the Dhammapada in a particular way? And thank you for giving a nice outline, so I too can learn more about Gautama Siddhartha. I know some, but it's like, oh yeah, that great outline on ways to learn more about him. But that direct mode of self-initiation was kind of a fascinating thing to me.
That kind of blew me away too. That to even put it in those terms, I think that it could very well be that when he wrote the Dhammapada, he was in a state of consciousness that is still embedded in the work. That is the Shakti or the Chi or whatever you would, term you'd want to use. That's why people are able to evolve from it. And it's it can think it can easily fool us because the words are so simple and they're so not hitting anybody over the head, in that regard. It's an extremely kind tone that feels more than just kind. Does that make any sense?
And that compassion.
Yes, but don't we know? I mean, we know in this instance, and I'm grateful to learn about it. But don't we know that every great leader, every great being has some of that going on? There's an imprint of some kind. And if we want to take up with it, no worries, it'll be there. But Gautama Buddha's moral center is so completely strong that I think the stronger that is in a being, the more a person can get from it. I'm not altogether sure about how these things work, but it's the idea about the Dhammapada is that it has the power to transform. Of course, we have to make the commitment and we have to do the work, but the simplicity maybe fools us. I don't know.
And that's really kind of what I was wondering about. What is, in your readings, what is the work of studying the Dhammapada, or you sleep with it under your pillow at night? That's what you do.
Sounds like a plan. No, I don't know. I think that he is so intent on having us being independent that we have to create it for ourselves. Whatever your idea or ritual may be. It could be like, what is it, the Pythagoras Nightly Review? Was it that? So it could be that. It could be that you grab hold of the Dhammapada at night, meditate on those words and those ideas, maybe see yourself in some situation. I'm not sure, but I trust what's said here.
Thank you.
That much, yeah. Jeff Clark, you had your hand up and then you put it down. Did you want to ask anything else?
Well, I already asked, Monica. Thank you.
Okay, all right. David, hi. Unmute.
Sorry about that.
That's
APB makes a very interesting statement in one of her articles that that we should have the courage to act in behalf of our own conscience more than someone else's opinion. So maybe conscience is our ultimate guide for action, and what could be higher than our inner conscience, our conscience?
Yes.
Or is there anything higher than that we should choose to act on behalf of?
That's right. That's maybe one of the ultimate modes of self-motivation is to listen inside, listen to what's going on inside. And don't dance around it. Take it and do something about it.
So what one last question then, is conscience something that we can refine as we go along?
I think so. But see, having read about Gautama Buddha and getting the idea that the strength of his movement and everything he did was centered around this powerful moral component, makes me think that the more purification, the louder the voice of the conscience. I don't know, maybe so.
Yeah.
And the intuition, I'm not sure which exact theosophical place that is, but I can't help but think that doing the practices or aligning ourselves with what he speaks of is only going to increase that side of our nature. It's only going to be louder, you know. How many times have we gone to a place and felt, oh, I think I'm going home. I don't think this is good, you know, or you just feel that something is wrong, and it doesn't have to, it can be conversely something very positive. So listening, it's just listening from the inside out.
Next week, it's Taurus, right?
Oh, yes, that's right. Okay, so I guess we're going to close, but we want to remind you that next week, the presentation is going to be on the astrological sign of Taurus, and that will be given to us by our own Ken Campos. So please come back and be with us.
Thank you, Monica.
Much love. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you. Everybody be well and safe.
Thank you, Monica. Wonderful.